Let's go live with Jack Kelly. Welcome to the one-of-a-kind LinkedIn live show that will help you with your job search and advancing your career. We will bring in educated career experts who will share their insights and give you inside tips on how to be successful in your job search. Now let's get into today's show with your host, Jack Kelly.
Preparing, it says preparing. Whoa, that was quick. It usually takes a while. Meeting is now live on live stream. Yes, so welcome to Let's Go Live with Jack Kelly. And today we have two amazing, tremendous, awesome, fabulous career coaches. And, I'll hand it off to them. So maybe, Crystal, Sabrina, you can introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you guys do. You want to start, Crystal?
You want to start with me? Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Crystal Debrah-Ekolie. I am a careers coach. I'm also a podcast host as well. And I just love helping people with careers. That's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Awesome. And Sabrina?
I'm Sabrina Woods. I'm a holistic career and life coach. And I'm also the president of the Career Conscious Consortium. And I love working with people who are doing complex, difficult, intense career transitions. I'm not sure why, but maybe the harder the situation, the more I get
like
excited. Challenged. Yeah. So I work with a lot of very stressed out individuals because anybody that's doing a career transition right now is really struggling. So I'm really glad to be here and talk about this topic with Crystal and with you, Jack. So well, thanks so much for having us.
Thanks. So my pleasure. That's what I want to talk about. After it's over a year now here in the US, and I guess the same thing in England, that we've been in this pandemic. And, it's interesting here in the States, and I imagine the same thing in the UK, people handle it differently. Some, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, doing really well. Oh, yeah. A lot of other people, not so much. And then you have some people who are getting by and some people who aren't. You have people who are long-term unemployed. You have people who are worried to hang on to their jobs. People who are worried, how do I balance remote work, and make sure people know what I'm doing. So there's a lot of, I feel from speaking to people, both personally and professionally, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of doom and gloom. And it doesn't help with the media is constantly just whatever's bad, they're telling us. So it just heaps upon it. So I thought for today, maybe, that Sabrina, Crystal, you could share some advice about for the folks who are going through this, how to cope. And like maybe one of the first things, is there like a go-to thing that you would suggest to people, whether it's a mantra, whether it's breathing techniques, whether it's shifting your mindset to start saying, okay, how to deal with this, how to deal with the anxiety?
Jack, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to say one of the things I'm doing with clients in the beginning of a coaching session and even at the beginning of a webinar, I might be teaching something even like social media, like LinkedIn, and I'm using deep breaths at the start. Okay. So of those kinds of things.
You want to do it?
I'd love to just, it sounds funny. Hey, everybody, you want to join me in breathing? But
I'll do it.
Let's do it. Okay, here's what I like people to consider. Putting both feet firmly planted on the ground so that you feel grounded to the earth. So you're not floating, you're more solid. Next thing is from your feet, go all the way up your legs with your attention. Notice now where your legs, your glutes, your hamstrings are touching the chair. You might even shift your seat a little bit, going back and forth on your hips, just to really actually notice where you are on the chair. Then move upwards to your lower back. Just notice, bring attention, just observation. Continue up the back and invite your shoulders to be upright, but not tight to your ears. Upright, but relaxed. What we want is a really strong posture, but relaxed and open chest for these deep breaths. Now that we kind of have noticed that we have a body, because we spend so much time in our heads, right? Now we'll go through a 4-count inhale, a 4-count hold, and a 4-count exhale. And we'll just do that 3 times. Okay, it's an invitation to join us. Here we go. Deep breath in. hold, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale. Next breath in. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1, and slow exhale. Last deep breath in. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale. And take 1 or 2 more breaths with your attention focused on the inhale and the exhale at any pace you wish. Just noticing. Giving a moment of relaxation and presence. And then when you're ready, opening your eyes. What I love about this is it's portable. You can do it in an elevator. No one even needs to know that you're doing these deep breaths. And I think it resets our system. And for the case of this, I think I've helped people arrive and become more open to the conversation at hand. I was saying to Jack that I use breath work all the time. Here's the funny thing, and we'll talk more about this as we go along, but I'm not a very good meditator. That's shocking, right? I'm a mindfulness advocate. To sit on a cushion for a half hour, oh my God. I'm like, one of those, I haven't even had coffee and it's hard for me to just sit. But you give me something short, like a few deep breaths, or you give me something that is more active, like walking, but with focus of attention on something. And I do so much better. So just know that we'll be talking about making it your own if you want to, try different methods to reduce your stress. But know that even one deep breath can bring your nervous system back down when it's amped up. Last thing I'll say is a car came out of a side street yesterday. I was in the car with my husband, and it was very startling. And right after that happened, we're both slightly traumatized, right? Because it looked like it was going to hit us, but it didn't. So our nervous system sent a message to the brain to alert us. And what I said to my husband was, take one really good deep breath. Because when you do that, you tell the brain you're okay. If you're in a long-term job search, you're constantly in this chronic stress. Even if you got laid off a week ago, you've had a horrible week if you got laid off or furloughed a week ago. So if we can turn that switch with those deep breaths, even 3 or 2 or 1, we can get ourselves and our bodies into a much better place. So small but powerful.
Crystal, how did you feel about it? Did that calm you down or did it help?
Yeah, I definitely feel a lot more calm. And I actually remember when I used to play basketball back at sixth form, secondary school, one of those. We used to do that. We used to do lots of these breathing techniques, but it was actually just to calm us down so that we could catch our breath and continue running. So I know it's a slightly different thing, but I can see the connection there where your heart's racing, I think they're quite similar states. So I think it does work.
It's interesting. It's interesting, Crystal, like if we had this conversation 2 years ago, I would be like, what? What is this? But I had mentioned to Sabrina, now it's probably a year ago. I don't know, when we spoke at, that summit, the career job summit, that I've taken up yoga and from there started kind of looking into mindfulness and deep breathing. And I find the deep breathing, it really does help. So people who are watching this, who are skeptical and rolling their eyes, and I get that because I was that guy, a couple of years ago. Yeah, I like yoga. But I got to tell you, from a stress reliever, it definitely helps. Where I'll give you one example, like, when you can't fall asleep at night and then you get stressed because you're like, I can't fall asleep, but I got to wake up. You know what I mean? I gotta get enough sleep because then I'm going to wake up, I'm going to be all tired and cranky. and you make yourself stay up more. I do the deep breathing then, and works like a charm. I just block out everything, do deep breaths, and then before you know it, I'm out. So like, it's like a very interesting hack. Or if it's like a stressful, if it's something, I don't know, like something doing, I'm really wound up, and we all get wound up, and you do just a little breathing, it just kind of all right, grounds you a little bit. Does that make sense, Sabrina? Is that kind of the purpose? And probably, like different purposes, but that makes sense?
Absolutely. And I was just going to throw it back to Crystal and say, what else so we've got the breath. That's just like super powerful. What are some other things that you've noticed in your career coaching practice and with whether it's clients or students that you're working with?
Yeah, so for me, it's not necessarily meditation. It's not something I admit I've done much of. I have tried yoga though, and it does calm me. But for me, I try and get people to reframe the situation. So yes, looking for a job is stressful. It's irritating. It's just not the best thing. It's not something that you enjoy. I try and get people to see it from a positive perspective. For whatever reason, you have to look for a job, right? And you're going to learn something from this process. It's not enjoyable, but something good will come from it. You might learn about a new area that you might want to go into. You might meet new people. I've met lots of new people when I was looking for work in the past. I met lots of new people in different sectors who I now speak to today, or who might tell me about something that could enhance my career now. So I see it as, it's not a nice process, but you learn so much in the process.
So when you say reframe, just so I understand, what do you exactly mean by that?
Yeah, so when you're looking for work, you can sometimes think, I'm never going to get anything. This is a waste of time. It's not working for me, especially if you're sending out lots of applications and nothing's coming back. But I mean, looking at it from a positive perspective. So rather than just focusing on the negatives, think about the positives of the situation. So for example, maybe you're not getting work because your approach might not be correct. It could be that you're not selling yourself enough, but in the process, you learn how to do that effectively. I just think you should see it as a growing experience rather than something that's a hindrance. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, so what you're saying is this, so looking for a job, let's say it's like a chore. I hate to compare it this way because I don't want to make people feel worse about looking for a job, but let's say it's a chore you have to do, and let's say washing the dishes. You could just say, oh, I gotta wash the dishes, this is annoying. Or you could just focus on washing the dishes, maybe don't think of it as a chore, just kind of go with it, make the best of it, have a different attitude. And then if you change the way you look at it and you change your attitude, then I think, would you say that everything changes along with it and that you do better in the job search? Because now you're not looking at like, oh my God, I got to do this. This is terrible. You look at, oh wait, this could be a really exciting opportunity. Maybe I'm in between jobs, but I could perhaps get even a better job, more money, more opportunity, more growth. And this could be the best thing that happened to me. And kind of, is that what you mean? Like you reframe it to say, okay, I'm looking at now like, hey, this is a good thing. This frees me up to find, my future. Is that?
That's exactly what I mean. There are so many possibilities out there. And I think people worry so much, which is understandable because for some people, they've lost their jobs through redundancy. It's not that they chose to change careers, for example, that it's trying to see it from the perspective you just mentioned. Yes.
Now, how do you do that, Sabrina? Because I was like, how do you, it seems easy to say, right? Like, but then to actually put that in practice to say, okay, I lost my job. I'm hurting. I'm not getting the income coming in. I'm a little stressed. Like, what kind of mental hacks do you do to kind of turn it around so you can kind of, put that other aside and just focus more on the positive aspects?
Yes, I don't mind speaking to this. And Sabrina, you've heard me talk about this before. When people have these negative thoughts, what I would suggest is write them down on paper, but then also think about the opposite of that. So if you say something like, I'm never going to get a job, underneath that negative thought, put something positive. So I will find the right job for me eventually. And so for every negative thought, make sure that you do that. and continue to recite the positive things. So for me, it's what you feed your mind, what you feed your heart, because that is eventually what will come out of you. That's you're going to focus on. So if you're focused on the positives, it does help. This is something I have personally, I found very, very useful. And even just today, just before I jumped on this live, I was speaking to someone who had quite a negative perspective, understandably. But just by me asking them, do you have to make a decision on a career right now? What's wrong with exploring? It completely shifted their thoughts. They were smiling at the end of it. So I do think mindset is incredibly important.
Sabrina, I remember you telling me about, I'm going to butcher it, but like kind of the neuroscience behind that you do kind of change the way you're thinking. Do I have that kind of right? Where you can, by doing what Crystal was mentioning, it's actually going to change the way your brain is processing, so that if you're constantly being negative and thinking negative thoughts, your brain is just wired to keep seeing everything as negative. But if you change it the way Crystal is saying, and you write down in positive, saying, I'm going to find a new job, I'm going to make more money, I'm going to have a better opportunity, all of a sudden your brain rewires it so that you really do become more positive.
There's a really good neuropsychologist out there.
Okay. Wait, what's it called? Neuroscience, or what's like the whole term for that?
Neuroscience is the category, but there's a really good neuropsychologist out there by the name of Rick Hansen, PhD. And he has a book called Hardwiring Happiness, but he also has a TEDx. In fact, when we save this session, I think we can add some links to it too, can't we? So I'll send the link out, but if you just Google Rick Hansen, Hanson, TEDx, Hardwiring Happiness, what he teaches and what other neuroscientists will teach is that our brain automatically wires negative experiences faster than positive, but this was for a survival mechanism. Way back in the day, if a saber-toothed tiger jumped out at you, you needed to hardwire how to deal with that survival moment, right? But a happy incident, like, oh, look at the pretty sunset, doesn't hardwire in the brain as fast unless you take the time. And Rick Hansen talks about 20 seconds to hardwire in the good. He calls it taking in the good. So if taking in the good means writing these statements, I might be able to find a job someday, even if we can't say I will find a job. I might, if we just put some positives in that space, then we're building that resilience for ourselves. And this can come in all different forms. And I can get into it later, but there's also a technique I can talk about for dealing with really hard emotions or moments where our emotions are taking over. But I don't know if I can pivot and come back to that if it's kind of related, but a little different. A tool called RAIN. But we can go on with other topics first before I circle back to that one if you'd like.
Would you also say, so I really, it's really interesting what you're saying, is that basically our core thing is animals that back, when, centuries ago, even more, like we just wired to be like, all right, we're watching for danger, we're going to be attacked by a predator, whatever is going to happen. And so our mind is like always looking for the negative just to survive. Fast forward to now, it's a whole different world. You still need that, but not as much. So, but I guess the brain is made up that way. So you got to kind of push back is what I guess you're saying, to say, hey, even though it's going to be hardwired for all the negativity, fight or flight kind of thing, you have to readjust it to say, okay, yeah, I'm going through a tough time now. Lost a job, I'm in between jobs, I'm a little panicking, but I got to have this kind of, and I'm curious what you say, have this mantra, have this mindset, have this, I will find a job. Like almost say it to yourself and will it, I'm going to find a job. I'll find a better job. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to be happier in this job. I'm going to have a better career. And then, Crystal, I think what you were kind of alluding to, by doing that, it does become self-fulfilling. Is that right?
Definitely. That's exactly what I meant.
Yeah. Have you seen like your people that you help coach that like you've watched from the beginning and they've done that and then you're like, oh my God, it worked. It helped. I guess you've seen that a lot, huh? Yeah,
I guess I tend to see it straight away.
Yeah.
As in, the shift from, gosh, I can't do this, to actually there's hope. So right. I've seen definitely a lot more of that, because when I work with students, it's quite short term. It's not that I work with them long term.
So these are more students a lot that you help who are going to your university, who are going through some challenges, and you're helping them to get,
Yes.
you know.
Yes, so with the students, it's not long term, it's pretty much
Yeah.
one-to-one, but yes, you do see that shift, and I do use the techniques that we've spoken about for that.
Do you Sabrina, Crystal, do you subscribe to using like mantras or visualization, like seeing yourself in that job, seeing yourself in that office? Are those?
I can jump in and just say, while I might not repeat a mantra in my head, I'll share a quick story about having a visual reminder about what you're going after can help you enhance that. So
No, is that Sabrina? Oh, okay.
Oh, can you still hear me?
It just froze for an instant. Yeah, when you said.
Okay. I did a guided visualization with a client a couple of years ago, and asked her some questions about what she wants in that future environment. Right. And we got it down after we came out of that kind of mindfulness state. We got it down to 5 bullets. She took those 5 things, even though she didn't know how she was going to manifest or bring to life those 5 elements in a job. She didn't know. There was no job title on there. It was like, this is what I want in my next environment. These are the skills I want to use, etc. 5 bullets went on her fridge. I worked with her for a long time because she was in a highly stressed legal environment, and it was taking her a long time to do this pivot. She wanted to leave the field she was in. Crystal would know nothing about that. Sorry, I digress. Former lawyer. She stayed in the field, but tangentially. But what happened was when she finally did land the job, she said, Sabrina, I looked back at the list on the fridge. All 5 boxes were ticked. And I was like, yes. Mm-hmm. So there was something about having those messages in front of her. The fridge you see several times a day, right? So reinforcing those messages and seeing it. And so slowly she started to believe that that was possible. And yeah, it took her a long time, but she did it. And I think that having those little messages there were really helpful.
Is that like a visualization board? Is that what you're talking about in part?
No, they were 5 bullets, short sentences that she put on a piece of paper on her fridge. And I'm pulling something off because I've had this in my office for years. If I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious, this is what I look at. So for me, it says I'm at peace. And I remind myself that the core of me is at peace. And I've just had this wave, it's kind of like the ocean is quiet underneath, but there's waves going on. So I think like, oh my gosh, there's all this going on, but I can remember that in my core, I'm at peace. And so you might need, I am worthy. If you have been out of job for a while, you're feeling really crappy. You might need to remind yourself. So whereas I might not say a mantra, I do like having positive statements floating around. So
in one of the other LinkedIn Labs I had, and I apologize, I can't remember who mentioned to me about having a visualization board, which kind of sounds what you're talking about, but in addition to that, I guess literally a board with every mantra.
You can have a big board with images on it.
Yeah.
And words. I've seen people use that.
Oh, Jay, Crystal, so
right behind me. I've got about 3 or 4, but I haven't.
If you don't mind my asking,
my life.
What do you have on there? Like, what do you?
So I've got my current workload. What am I doing now? What am I not doing now? Where do I see myself at 40? All of that, what I want in life. It's just all across the back of the wall.
Wait. I just got, could it be a little bit more pressure? Like, what am I going to do at 40? Like, could that backfire on people that it's like too much pressure? If you don't do it, then you feel bad? Seriously, is it like you have to balance it?
I think, no, I see what you mean. I have short term and I have long term, but for me, I'm someone who likes to see things quite far ahead. And look, it doesn't mean I'm going to do exactly what I've written, but it just shows me that I'm on the way, and it just keeps me focused. It probably will change, but there are some things I would like to achieve by a certain time. So when I feel like I'm slacking a little bit, I push myself and remind myself I can get there. But then I also have
it's a visual, it inhabits your space, right? It's this visual that inhabits your space and keeps you feeling that aliveness and that sense of purpose. It's really awesome.
And I see the connection there. Because, okay, on one end you have the visualization. Is it called a visualization board? Is that the right term? Or
vision board?
Vision board. So you have the vision board, but then also if you are in your mind like reframing or it's reframing your thoughts. You said it's reframing or reframing, right? Is that the right term, Crystal?
I think
When you said
before I said yes, you're reframing the situation,
okay.
what it looks like to you.
So in a way, they kind of dovetail together because one, you're just having a visual thing that you're looking right at it, and it keeps reminding you, here, this is my journey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want to achieve. But then also, you're also at the same time changing the way you're looking at things. So kind of these things kind of coalesce together. So there's not like, sounds like there's just not one answer how you can kind of de-stress and deal with anxiety. It sounds like so far in the short time we're talking about like deep breathing to kind of just calm you down a little bit, so you could kind of approach things from a more calm perspective instead of being all agitated and aggravated and uptight. You could have a vision board. You could reframe like how you think of things, so you could be more positive. You can move forward. What are some of the other things? Because I notice with people, they lose their confidence and the self-esteem when they keep getting rejected, especially in this market. I can tell you firsthand as a recruiter, you get ghosted, you don't hear feedback, you don't get this constructive criticism, and then you're at home and you're not with your colleagues or coworkers, and you just feel lost. So how would you suggest to people to get that confidence boost back?
Yeah.
I can jump in and
Sure.
share a tool that I call, and I think I've got a blog post a long time ago about it. I call it get a boost from your past. So what I actually ask, Jack, let me pretend you're my client right now.
Okay.
And let's just say you had a layoff 3 months ago, and you're swimming, and you're like, I'm not hearing back from recruiters, and your self-esteem is each day, it feels like it's just eroding, even though you haven't changed. Like, you still have all these skills, but so it's starting to go down. And so what I might give you as a homework assignment is I might say, okay, Jack, tell me about your last job and about who some of your advocates were, who thought you did awesome work, and you'd name maybe 3 people. And then I might say, tell me, a good friend of yours, and, who pretend like, for example, I was going to go talk to them and hear about you. Who could I talk to that would say nice things about you? And you come up with 5 people, or even you come up with 3 people. And what the homework assignment asks you to do is step into their shoes. It's kind of weird. Write about yourself as if you were them. So you might say, okay, Tom, my coworker from my last job, he'd probably say that I was a hard worker, but I was a really good collaborator, and da, da, da. So you write a little paragraph or a couple of bullets, but you write it as if you're Tom. You take yourself in, put yourself in his shoes, and you write it in that tense. So there's something about it. You get out of you and you remember, and it seems to like crystallize a little bit more when you put it in their as if they were saying it. So you kind of write it as if maybe I was interviewing Tom as one of your references for a future job.
That's interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, would you also think that to look at past achievements, so that,
oh yeah,
let's say, to use the example, I'm in between roles, I'm feeling a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-confidence. I feel like, am I ever going to get through this? In addition to what you mentioned, Sabrina, maybe look back and think of past achievements and say, hey, I went through this really difficult time period and I came through it. And actually, I think I saw a posting you did on LinkedIn. I came through it, but I'm actually better for it. So in a way, in hindsight, it wasn't so bad that it happened, because I'm a better person for it now, and I'm heading in a good direction. Does that help too, to kind of think, okay, not everything is bad. This right here, right now, kind of sucks, but look at what happened, last year, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, that I went through something was really awful and I got through it and I'm better for it, so I could do it again.
Oh yeah, especially if you're feeling this lack of nothing's ever going to work out. When you feel that really dismal space, look back to like your past 2 or 3 really tough challenges, whatever they were, because that might remind you of your strength, your perseverance, your talents. What helped you get through that really difficult time? And then that gives you that support. I can do this again. I did it then. I can do it again. So that's right. That past accomplishments, as well as past getting through those challenges, can give you that boost.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple different things that kind of help you get back.
Now, what about this, Crystal? This might sound weird, but let's say it's hard to shake it off. Is there a way you could just, for that one interview, just change who you are? I don't mean be a radically different person, but you go for an interview, right? And it's been 6 months, you've been out of work, you keep getting rejected, and trust me, I hear from people all the time like this, and they just feel going into the interview, all right, here's another, it's just not going to work out, with the wrong mindset. Is there a way to get like an adrenaline shot of like a boost of confidence, self-esteem, just to get through that interview to be your old self? Is there a way, like something that, do you know?
I think there are a couple of things. I think one is, I'm not sure if any of you have heard of Amy Cuddy, and where she talks about the power pose. So you stand like a superhero, your arms. It's apparently meant to give you a boost of confidence so that you walk into the interview feeling like you are a superhero. So through that's something that she's mentioned.
Okay, I like that. So the way to do something like she's doing like a superhero, but I guess certain music maybe that pumps you up perhaps too.
Ooh, Rocky.
Or dancing, jogging, like just something like, doing jumping jacks before get your heart, you know what I mean? Is that?
Oh, I see. So making sure that physically you're ready.
I don't, just get yourself like get yourself out of that bad head into like, okay, because here's what happens in real life. I see all the time. Someone goes for an interview and then I get the feedback and they'll say, hey, Jack, you know what? This person just came across a little too resentful, a little too, bitter, a little angry. And like, I want to tell them, it's a pandemic and the person's out of work. How do you want them to be? But they want them to be, hey, I'm doing great. Hey, I'm doing, everything is fine.
I mean,
because they can't be honest. They can't really come across like I'm feeling miserable, because they can say, pass, we're going to go and look for someone else who's feeling, who's upbeat, who's positive. So power pose, that's your,
that's one. Another one.
I feel better to do that.
Supposedly it does help. But another thing I've heard is, think of someone who's the most positive person that you know in the world, or who's someone that you really admire, and imagine you're them. So you walk into the interview, you're still you. You're still who you are, but you walk into the interview with that person kind of on your back. You imagine you're that person, and you project that person in the interview. So you come across as more positive because you're imagining you're them. I haven't tried this myself.
I like that. I'm going to try. It's like you're channeling. So you're saying you're channeling the best version of yourself through whoever your hero is, or whoever is like you feel, or even a friend that that like you feel, what would, my friend Sabrina do in that instance? Okay, she would do this. All right, that's what I'm going to do. And maybe it takes the pressure off, because now like you're not yourself, you're channeling somebody else.
Sabrina, yeah. And I'd be really chilled and relaxed and articulate. And I'd get the job.
So a power pose, challenge, like who would you take?
I'll give you a crazy one, Jack.
What?
Do you want one that's a little more on the crazy side? So this kind of goes to families. This is in the psychology realm again, but we have different parts of ourselves, right? So if you could actually think about that fear, or that I'm not good enough, or that I'm going to botch this, if you could kind of take that self-doubt self and actually imagine it's a little whatever thing, and imagine taking that piece of yourself, opening the door, boom, I'm leaving you outside. You're this naysayer part of you, or this pessimist, or this negative, maybe it's there to keep me safe in some situations, but I don't need you right now. So if you could imagine kicking it out and then saying, I'm just going to come from the more powerful self, the more confident self, the more, hey, I'm going to allow for my best possible self to show up right now. But there's something about like this, it's kind of crazy, like, I'm going to kick it to the curb, literally, because we have these different components all within us. So if we can activate our stronger self and tell the other one to hit the road, it might be just fun and crazy enough to work.
Well, because I think what you're saying is that we all have like our monkey brain, where things are just constantly just popping up. And sometimes it's like, and if you're in between jobs, you lost your job, you're worried about losing your job, you're getting that, like you both have said before, oh, maybe I'll never get another job. I'm not going to find something. When you have those thoughts going through your head, you just stop it, right? You just, like you're saying, just take it, throw it away. But or at the same time, it's putting up some boundaries to say, all right, I'm getting this negative thought. I'm not going to let it take over. I'm going to block it. And then maybe to take what Crystal said earlier, to reframe it and say, okay, I know, all right, I'm getting this wave of negativity. I'm going to stop it, reframe it and say, nope, here's what I'm going to do instead. And then go to your vision board, go to, the notes that you have there and say, I got to go back to what I want to do, what I will do, what I will accomplish, and kind of change it. So it does sound really rational, Sabrina, in terms of just fighting back against that loop, that's going on in your head all the time. Now, what would you say about like hobbies, movies, just things? Sometimes is it helpful to say, you know what, I'm just not going to look for a job today. Let me go, let me just binge some Netflix. Let me just do whatever hobby I have. Let me, if it's a nice day, go for a long walk, go for a bicycle ride, what have you. Do you think that people put too much pressure on themselves to constantly be on, and then the results may not be so great because they just keep stressing themselves out?
Oh, whether you're working or whether you're in a job search, we can't plow through our days and do 10 hours straight and 12 hours straight and expect to still have a quality of life and B, still have quality output. So yeah, you might need that whole Friday to go and stop and just take that break, clear everything away. It's really hard for people in the job search to take those breaks because they feel this like, oh, I'm supposed to. So if you can hear it from career coaches that say this is really good for you, and then you can reignite it after you've had your break. So you can have those whole day breaks, but I'd also highly recommend don't sit for more than 60 to 90 minutes max in front of a computer. Get up, take a quick break, get a glass of water, do a slow walk through your living room and back, even if you can't get outside for 2 seconds. Don't sit for 60 to 90 minutes, more than that, because our productivity starts to go down. So whether you're in the job search or on a job, those breaks are really, really good. And I'll take a micro break. I literally will go out for a walk. Sometimes it's 5 or 6 minutes in between a client or a meeting. That's not very long. And people might think that's a waste of time. Come back fresh.
Yeah.
I come back in such a different way after even something that's less than 10 minutes. It's powerful for me.
I agree. It makes it right. I find that myself too, where sometimes after a while you just stare at the computer, you're blurry. It's just you're in a rut, and then by just doing whatever, it just kind of changes the way you're looking at it. It's kind of a refresher, and it helps.
I wanted to add to that actually. I think there is this culture out there, and I think it's fueled by a lot of entrepreneurs that you have to grind and hustle all the time in order to succeed. And look, I'm all for hard work. I get it, but I think you need to rest. I think people don't really understand the importance of rest. Even God himself needed to rest for a day, so I admire what, the work he done. So I just think we underestimate how much we need to rest, and people should not feel guilty that they're taking time out to walk, to watch Netflix. Look, you can't do it all the time, okay, but you need a bit more balance, because whatever work you're producing, it won't be to a high standard anyway, because you're stressed. You need to rest. Yeah.
Now, do you find that with you're in a university setting? Do you find that with the students? Because from my understanding, it's a high-end university, so I imagine the stress level is up. Everybody's looking over at the next person, and you feel you've got to do as good as them or better than them, and everyone is really smart. How do you help them not just get, like, they're probably doing really well on their own, but you're looking at the person here and there, and you're kind of a little jealous. Why am I not getting the same grades, or why am I not getting the same co-op or internship?
So without breaching confidentiality, I say to them, look, I see so many people each week, and you're all asking me the same questions. You're all worried that the person next door to you is doing more, but you're all doing your best, and you're all different people, and therefore your outcomes will be completely different. And so I just remind them that, look, it's not a race with this other person. The only person you're really racing is yourself. And with the more mature students, so those who maybe are changing careers, they're probably not as worried about that. They tend to get that a bit more.
It's hard to do that, isn't it? To kind of separate yourself and not especially with social media now, like, you go on
Oh,
Instagram, you go on, Twitter, Facebook, everybody is like, what a wonderful life. Everything is great. Everything's fantastic. And then it makes you feel even worse about yourself saying, how come my life isn't all cool?
switch
So,
it off.
yeah,
Switch it off. If you know you're stressed and you're seeing everyone succeed, they're just showing you their highlight reel. It doesn't mean
yeah.
that everything's all good all of the time. No, that's all they're showing you. You don't know what's going on in the background. And if it's stressing you out, come off for a few weeks, focus on what you're doing and come back when you feel better. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard though to turn it off, right?
Have you watched, is it called The Social Experiment on Netflix? Have either of you watched it?
I know of it, but no, I haven't watched it.
After watching that, you might
Yeah,
stop for a couple of weeks. I would recommend it.
because I'll be on social media in a different way for the most part. As a recruiter, I'm on LinkedIn looking for candidates and all that kind of stuff. I write for Forbes, so I post my things there. But then I'm always looking for ideas to write about. But you can't get help sucked into, hey, I just made a fortune in cryptocurrencies. I just, and it's like, sometimes it's hard to kind of divorce yourself saying like, well, I'm such a loser. How come I'm not doing this? What's going on? It's really weird, but you just got to shut it off, right? You can't, you just got to understand it's that highlight reel that someone's showing you, not the real world.
I mean, that's what I think. But look, that's happening for them. I just think if you see yourself as a unique person, your time will come. You've also had victories and other people haven't had them. I just think you just can't focus on others too much. And you're right, it's easier said than done, but you have to remind yourself constantly of this because, yeah, it's a very real thing. Young people struggle with it, older people struggle with it.
Do you think?
I'll throw out something. I've had, when I work with clients, I help them actually put together a wellness strategy. We look at a couple different areas of their life. And I literally had a client recently who said, I am probably spending too much time on social media. And that's one of the things that's keeping me from doing some of the other things that would be more proactive, right? She's trying to do a career change. And so I said, first step, I'm not asking you to change it, but measure it. She's like, okay. So awareness, whatever it is that's troubling us so that we want it, or whatever habit we want to change, if we take it literally one small step at a time, but let the first step be measurement, awareness. So the next time they meet with her, she's going to say, this is how much per day. This was my average. And then I'm going to say, well, that's interesting. And then would you like to set a small goal to reduce it? Maybe it's by 5%, 10% on 3 days. If we can do awareness first and then a micro change. The problem where I think we get stuck is we want to do a big change. Oh, I'm going to shut the thing off. I'm not going to listen to it for 3 weeks. That's harder, I think. Or I'm going to exercise every day for 60 minutes. Okay, but what if you tried 10 minutes? Like this morning, I told myself 15 minutes on the bike, Sabrina. You can do this, right? At a 9 o'clock client, I'm like, I can do the bike in the shower and then blow the hair out and all this stuff. I can do this. I ended up doing 30 minutes, but my goal was only 15. My goal each week is 15 minutes of cardio 3 times a week. Well, sometimes I could go less, but sometimes I go more. Yeah. So awareness and then start small for changing a habit is what I would pitch.
I like, which is a micro habit.
Micro. Yeah. Try and produce or start a micro habit. Tinyhabits.com is something you could, I think I've got the right website. I can double check that. Is where I've gotten some of those ideas from. Again, really, really small. The story that I read was like, if you're not going to the gym, then start the habit of putting your gym shoes on and walking to the end of the driveway and back and call that progress. And then spend 5 minutes at the gym once a week. Okay, I made it. And then you build from there.
Makes sense.
We're trying to train our brain to do something new.
And that's interesting because so if let's say you're in the midst of a job search, you're just thinking, I have to get a new job, which is a big audacious goal. Because if let's say you're a mid to senior level person, just sake of conversation, that could take months and months, even in the good times, meeting with so many people.
It can take a year or more.
Yeah. So if you take a micro habit and say, okay, my long-term goal is getting a job. like on your vision board, long term is I'm going to get a job, right, Crystal, like on the board up there. But then the micro habit would be, okay, today I'm just going to reach out to people I know in my network to let them know my situation, to see if they have any leads in companies I want to work for. So then you make this micro habit. I'm just going to break it down to this one thing so I can measure it. I can have more control over it. I'm not thinking, I got to get a job. I got to get a job. You're like, okay, no, right now, today, I'm just focusing on this one thing. And then maybe the later in the day or the next day, I'm just going to focus on like, maybe I'm going to reinvent myself. What else could I do? Let me explore other things, how I could change my career, how I could reinvent myself, how I could pivot. Then maybe another day it could be, okay, maybe I just take a gig kind of role, go into the gig economy, maybe a contract role in the meantime to do something, so that rather than get overwhelmed with the enormity of, I got to get a new job, I got to get a new job, you do these little things that build up and just focus on those. Is that kind of what you mean with the tiny habits?
Yeah, and it can be even so small that you say, my goal is to reach out to one person for an informational interview sometime this week. It's not to have the informational interview done, but start with, I'm going to reach out to one person. Maybe you end up reaching out to 3 that week.
Yeah.
But if we can make it small and manageable and not measure the end result, but measure interim, I'm going to spend, a half an hour working on my resume. I'm not trying to finish it, but let me just put on my calendar Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I'm going to try for half an hour. Because people get stuck with big things, and that makes them feel worse. So I like break it down.
See, I like that because to get that big goal, it's not going to happen right away, for the most part. So, but you can get little victories, and then if you get those little victories under your belt, you're going to feel more confident about yourself because you say, hey, I wanted to reach out to, like Sabrina said, one person, but you got 3 people. Then you're feeling like, oh, this is cool.
And celebrate it.
Yeah.
And actually celebrate it. Like, yippee! I did it.
Yeah, most people
There's
don't
another
do that,
article
right?
I read recently about celebration. Like,
right, you got to celebrate each little thing. You got to celebrate. So then you feel, because then, like, I guess the more you do that, the more confident you can be, the more you feel good about yourself. Someone asks you, hey, what did you? Oh, I was really successful today. I spoke to 3 people who may have leads at certain companies. Great. I feel good.
You're also activating your dopamine, which is your reward system.
Yeah.
So if we want to continue to think about that neuroscience, when we set a goal and we meet it, we're releasing dopamine, which helps us get to the next goal or set the next goal.
Do you want to thinking, Crystal, maybe you see this in students. Do you think sometimes the stress comes from where you're doing something like you really don't want to do, but you're doing it because maybe societal pressure, maybe because if I go to this university, whether yours or another one, I'll get on the path to get a certain job. But in your heart, you're like, I really don't know if I want to do it, but you're caught in that hamster wheel. And you're stressed out because you're not really doing what you really want to do. Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's very common that people have pressure from perhaps family members.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they've picked a particular course because maybe their family have all been in this particular profession, or maybe they've come from another country, so there is that pressure to get a good job, whatever that means for them, and pursue it, even if maybe they want to do something that isn't as stable or has as high status as the job they're perhaps going for. But I think with situations like that, as a coach, you have to be careful. You can't push them, say, no, go and do this.
Right.
It's for them to discover by themselves. And I guess it's for you to give them that confidence to go into what they really want to do, but it's really up to them. So I'm quite cautious with that when it comes to parents, especially.
Yeah, because with young adults, I can imagine there's a lot of family pressure, to be fill in the blank, we want you to be this, that, and maybe they don't really have, I think people sometimes are good in math, sometimes they're not, sometimes people are good in whatever. And if you're kind of going against what you're good at, but you feel that you have to go that direction, that gotta lead to stress and anxiety too.
Of course, there'll definitely be stress and anxious, but it's just a matter of, they have to try it for themselves. I think sometimes it's an idea. So they may say to you, I want to be a lawyer. Okay, why? They can't answer it. It's when they've tried it, they may think, okay, no. Then they need to look for alternatives. And then it's about talking to them about having that discussion with whoever's putting the pressure on them. And that can be a very difficult discussion to have. especially if
Yeah.
they're paying for everything and you highly respect them. And there are some people though who just say, well, I'm not doing it and I'll make my way.
Yeah.
It
Which is,
varies
it's
so
hard.
much.
It's hard because then you have that probably internal conflict with your family that wants you to do whatever they want you to do, and you don't want to do it, and it's a lot of conflict. But I guess sometimes you have to do it. You have to go your own
Or
way.
it's for a season, or it's for a season. So some, again, another myth that an issue that I see with quite a few students is they think that once they pick one career, that's it. That's what you're doing for the rest of your life. And I often say to them, look, no, you will gain skills from this first career and you can pivot and change. And I do use myself as an example and lots of my colleagues who have switched from one profession to the other. And it's definitely something that will continue to happen.
I think so. I think we're going to be like for my kids, they'll probably have 4 different careers and like 5 different jobs within those careers because things are changing so quickly. You can't be like my parents' generation where you'd get a job and you do that and you retire, and that's it. It's a whole different world now. And which in a way, to reframe things, that's kind of cool. You're not locked into something. So if you could say, hey, you know what? I hate being an accountant. I want to do something else. That's fine. And you move on and you don't feel like you have to be stuck there for 30 years.
Yes, but then I'm also seeing people who have stuck, maybe they just fell into something because perhaps they didn't have a specific thing in mind. And it's later on in life, they're realizing, okay, I actually want to focus on what I care about, but they've had that time to think. And then I help them to pivot to what they really want. But this time, for them to create what they want, what kind of work do you see yourself doing? What does that look like? And help them to take their time to build what they want. So these aren't students, these are others that I work with. But I just think that you, in the end, with your career, you create what you want. I don't think there's a job out there that will fit you perfectly. I think you have to build it. Does that make sense to both of you?
Very much so. I find out from speaking to people, I imagine you as well, both as well, is during the pandemic, so many people have just reassessed their lives, their careers, their jobs, their future. Where they're like, do I really want to be doing this? Because you realize how life is so short and precious and fragile. It hits you right in the face. So you know it now. Like we all know it, but when you see it, you realize, oh my gosh. And they're like, do I want to do this for the next 5, 10, 20 years? And then they start thinking, what else could I do? What else that I could do that has some meaning, that has some purpose, that I feel good about myself. I wake up in the morning, even if it doesn't pay as much, but it's something I like. Do you both see that in your practices where people have had that like aha moment, like, oh my God, life is going to go by too quick. And what am I doing?
That's how my whole business, that's the whole business that I run. It's all people that have said, I think there's something else, or I think I can be happier, or this is such a toxic situation. I don't want to do this anymore. And so they embark on this, what has meaning for me and what is going to be a better fit. And that's just a joy and an honor to take people through that process. And I want to give a shout out for Crystal's podcast. So if you are a career changer or transitioner, Changes and Transitions is the name of the podcast. So check that out. It's really helpful, I think, to hear people's stories. It brings us hope and it gives us ideas and inspiration. So definitely check out the podcast.
And I think that's something people who are in between roles probably even owe it to themselves, I would say. What do you think? To actually start exploring that. Say, hey, wait, maybe, let's presume they like their job, their career where they were, but not loving it. Then maybe it makes sense to say, hey, let me use this time to reassess. What else?
I think a lot of people have done that. They've said, I have nothing to do at night. There's no places to go during this lockdown. Why don't I take a course? Why don't I start joining a professional association to test out this other career? Why don't I have some conversations with friends of friends? So I think that there's been a lot of that going on. And it's that combination of having, in some ways, more time in the evenings, at least, with this sense of the preciousness, like you were saying, that we're finite. And how much time we have left, we don't know. So why not use it really wisely? It's precious. I love that word. I think it's really come home because so many of us have lost someone at this time. Someone, even if it's just a friend of a friend, if you haven't lost someone directly. So it's just very, very in this now moment, that whole theme.
Jack, I'm not trying to steal your thunder. I know you're asking all the questions here, but do you think that even though people may, but this is for both of you, do you think that even though people may want to change careers, they're scared because of, they see it as a mountain? It's so difficult to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they don't even want to think about it.
Absolutely. Because
Don't know where to start.
well, like I imagine the same thing in the UK. Here in the US, people get so intertwined with their job and career. You know, you meet somebody, the first thing is like what you do. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, you know, I have pets. I mean, it's more of, they mean, what's your job? What's your career? So you get so like your whole identity gets wrapped up in it. That's why I think when people lose their job, it's so rough, because that's their identity. And for a short period of time, they feel, who am I now? So then to your question, then if you want to go do something else, it's kind of frightening, because like, okay, I've been a tax accountant or a stockbroker for 20 years and I'm only 40 something. How do I now become something different? And it's really kind of probably messes with your mind to figure out, I'm going to be a completely different kind of person. So yeah, it's a little scary. It's very scary. And then I wonder if people have this kind of self-doubt, like, well, who am I to say I've been doing such and such for so many years. Now I'm going to do something else. And they probably feel like, how do I have the right to do it or the ability to do it? And they, you know, and they don't. So yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, I'll just say fear.
Yeah.
Is probably the number one thing that stops people in their tracks. And it's all different kinds of fear, but fear. So it can be fear of that loss of identity, but it can be fear, will I be successful? Fear, will I find it? Fear, will the next job pay what this other one paid? So that's what I sense, whether they say it to me or not. That's what I know is a big part of it. You know, by nature, we like to be comfortable and we like some predictability in our life, and we like stability, even if we like adventure, right? We want a core of stability. So when we take someone's livelihood and we either pull it out from under them by laying them off or firing them or whatever it is, or we give them such a yucky work environment that they feel like they have to go, right? Then, oh my gosh, you know, this, losing my train of thought there, this whole thing could just become big and difficult, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. So anybody out there, I just want to say, don't give up if you do feel like you need a career shift or change, and plan to do it small bites at a time. Don't have to do it overnight, I think is what all of us want you to know. But it's so worth it to feel excited to get up and go to work in the morning, or at least feel like what you're doing is something in good alignment with your talents, with who you are. Sorry, got a little lost in my thought.
No, that's great. That's brilliant.
Stuff to talk about.
That's brilliant. You know, I love this conversation because oftentimes when you speak with people, let's say career coaches or whoever, it's much more the granular. Okay, here's what you do, and it's very nuts and bolts. What I really appreciate about this conversation is that it's something very different that people don't pay attention to. You know, it's a thought process. You know, it's developing the micro habits. It's maybe doing deep breathing to de-stress. So when you feel like you're just going out of your mind, how you can kind of get yourself back grounded. It's reframing things to say, hey, it's not that I lost a job. Now I have the ability, the freedom to pursue what I really want to pursue. Maybe I want to reinvent myself. Maybe I want to pivot. I'll try, I don't have to worry about getting a job tomorrow and be overwhelmed. Take those tiny habits and move forward. So it's kind of a lot of things that, you know, Crystal and Sabrina, you brought up that a lot of people don't talk about. And I don't know why. People feel uncomfortable talking about things like this. It's weird. It's like, it has to be, you know, okay, send out X amount of resumes, you know, make so many calls, and very, very regimented, where I think a lot of it is what both of you were sharing, is that you just need to have that kind of mindset change, this mindset shift, right? So that you have your vision board of here's what I want to do, here's where I want to go, and incorporate that into the day-to-day stuff. And with that, are there, you're not gonna believe, this is like an hour flew by. So any other things I didn't ask you, or is there any other advice you'd like to offer that I didn't kind of bring up for people who are just trying to get through this?
I'll bring up one more tool, and I know I'm going to have to butcher it and make it very, very short, but there's something more in the psychology space that's called RAIN, That's an acronym, RAIN. And it's you can get more information about it from Tara Brach, T-A-R-A, and then B-R-A-C-H. She has a PDF that you can actually download. It is a really good tool when you're dealing with these tough emotions, the fear. How am I going to pay my bills? I mean, there's some real fears out there, real high levels of stress when we're pulled in so many different directions and we have this instability in our world. So RAIN stands for recognize those emotions, allow or accept them. Now, that sounds weird. I don't want to accept that I'm feeling fearful right now. That's the last thing. But take a breath and accept that that's what it is. Name it, because if we can name it, is that irritation or is that actually fear? Is that I'm angry or is it something else? So name it. The next one is investigate. What's there? And investigate it with care. And say, is there something I need to acknowledge right now? What am I believing about this? Maybe there's some other way I need to look at this. So investigate. And the last one is N for nurture, with self-care. Tara Brach does a fabulous job of it. And I feel like it's just like we can, in our mind, if we have this tool, we can kind of catch ourselves from spiraling out of control and having something be worse. So you can try that RAIN practice: recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. That would be my last tip.
How about yourself, Chris? Any last pieces of advice?
Yes, I would say that if you are really struggling with all of this, it's a really challenging time, and it's something that it can just really get to you. But I think this is something that I have looked at. I think if you can volunteer, I'm not saying you have to volunteer 5 days a week, but even if it's just a few hours of your time whilst you're looking for work. I know it seems counterintuitive, but if you give your time to others and you're helping to nurture other people, what I helped young people with writing because they struggled with it. And it really helped because you're giving to other people. You are not focused so much on your particular issues. Yes, you'll get back to them, but I find it really helps. And I wrote an article back in July about the fact that there are benefits to volunteering. So as Sabrina, you were saying about dopamine in the brain, it makes you feel happier, it increases your confidence as well, and it just gives you a renewed sense of purpose and meaning. So I would say volunteer your time, even though you're finding things difficult.
That's great advice. That's really brilliant. Do you also find, Crystal, when you do that, this is going to sound a little crass maybe, it makes you also appreciate what you have. So even if you're in between roles, or you're worried about losing your job, sometimes if you're helping out people who are less fortunate than yourself, do you find out that actually it kind of wakes you up like, hey, I don't have it so bad. I actually have it so, is that part of it too? I know it's kind of a little crass to think in those terms, but it's reality.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
That's good advice. So wow, I think you two gave some amazing advice, right? In a relatively short period of time, a whole lot. So for people who want to get in touch with you or hear more about your advice, would you like to share where they could find you, the best place?
Mine is just my name, Sabrina-Woods.com. And I'll just say there's some resources like on there related to mindfulness and well-being. There's a handout on there that's got a lot of the things I've said. So you can look for that right at the top section of my mindfulness section. So that would be great. And I'm happy to connect with people on LinkedIn as well.
Great. How about yourself, Crystal? Where can people find you?
So you can find me at voraicoach.com. So it's VORAI coach.com. And on there you will find my podcast, which Sabrina mentioned earlier, and it's to help people with career change. There was a previous season that I did where I interviewed people who had been through the process or could help you and inspire you. So I would definitely just have a listen, see what you think, but it will definitely help you.
Well, that's great. You know what? Thank you so much, Crystal, Sabrina. And what we'll do is we'll kind of edit it. We'll usually do it on Friday, and I'll share it with you so you could put it on your sites, and then we'll upload it again to social media, because this is the type of thing that people could watch, several times to go through, because as we're talking about it, it goes by. But like when you really think about this, really some good quality advice that I don't think a lot of people hear it too often. as I mentioned before, they're hearing the nuts and bolts, but not like what you have to do to really power through, how to change your mindset, how to have these like little hacks to turn things around. So I think this is going to be so beneficial for so many people.
Jack, I'll say one more thing.
Sure.
When you're in the job search, part of it is the practical and the strategic, and that's only half the story. The other half is your mindset.
Yeah.
So if we can help you be less stressed, more present, more productive, and more confident, that is a huge component of how you're going to be successful with the practical. So that mindset and that ability to bring yourself into that, to stay motivated is part of that mindset too. It means just as much as the practical in this particular setting.
That's great. You know, for both of those, for Crystal, that was both great ways to end it, to give some really good, encouraging advice. So thank you so much. Seriously, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit. So this is awesome. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day. And then I'll shoot you an email once we have it up and ready. And then we'll see if there's other things, because you mentioned other places that we could put on, you know, when we upload it, so people could find other folks that you mentioned and other sites, so we can really help people. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the WeCruiter podcast. If you want to check out other great content from WeCruiter, make sure to visit us at wecruiter.io. That's WECRUITR.io. We offer tons of great resources for job seekers and professionals, so make sure to check us out today.